Greetings everyone, my name is Sai, and can you believe it's only been little over a month since Pokemon Go released? Just like in the late 90s, Pokemania has consumed the world all over again, as millions of Pokemon fans emerge from their couches and man caves, take to the streets, and live out the dream that we as a society have had for 20 years now. The fantasy of exploring unknown areas, and catching actual Pokemon in real life. And I think it's a testament to the power of that dream, and to the power of the Pokemon franchise as a whole, that Niantic Labs have accomplished all of that, considering the app itself is a giant piece of shit. Since day one, I have heard non-stop complaints about Pokemon Go from every direction, coming at once from both longtime Pokemon fans and the casual market the game has attracted. We've had servers constantly going down, the app crashes and freezes seemingly at random, tons of bugs and shitty design choices, and throughout it all, a severe lack of communication from Niantic. But none of that even slightly matters, because it's still a gigantic success regardless. In just its first month, Pokemon Go had 75 million downloads, pulled in over $200 million in revenue from its in-game cash shop, and apparently had more daily active users than Twitter. So, what's going on here? If almost everyone is in agreement that the app is, at the very least, severely lacking, why is it so insanely successful? Well, probably because it didn't have to be good. The key to Pokemon Go's success is that it has the Pokemon license attached to it, and as it is currently, Pokemon Go does the exact bare minimum of what is required to fulfill our collective childhood fantasies. When it's not crashing or bugging out, it allows you to walk around outside and catch Pokemon, and apparently that's enough. I mean, imagine if for a second, this wasn't a Pokemon game. If Niantic had just created their own batch of creatures, and it had no relation to Nintendo or Game Freak whatsoever. The game would probably be at a 1 out of 5 average review score, and no one would ever play it. But people are just so desperate for a Pokemon game like this, they'll look past all the flaws placed in front of them and try to enjoy it regardless. It's sort of like the initial success of the Wii, actually. Yeah, it could be a shit ton better than it is, but it gets by doing the absolute bare minimum of what's needed to make people feel like they're living in the future. So, why did it turn out like this? Well, call it an educated guess, but it seems to me like the cause of all the problems with Pokemon Go, from the severe lack of features, to the server crashes, to the terrible communication, is that everyone at Niantic just severely underestimated how popular it would be. Everything about the game suggests to me they probably thought it would be just an average mobile game that would maybe get a couple million downloads if it was lucky. And I just don't understand how that's possible. You are dealing with the Pokemon license here. A Pokemon-themed Chia Pet would be wildly successful, and meanwhile, you've basically given birth to every kid's wildest fantasy, and you expected it to just do okay? And I just don't understand how it's possible they put out a game that was this unfinished. I mean, I know Nintendo didn't directly make it, but even for all of Nintendo's faults, I can almost always rely on games with their name on it to have an extremely high level of polish. I mean, didn't they even give a single shit about how the game would turn out? Well, as it happens, it seems like they did. And not just Nintendo either. Last year, Niantic revealed they were being backed by a joint collaboration between Nintendo, the Pokemon Company, and Google, and they had been given a $20 million investment for the creation of Pokemon Go, with an additional $10 million to add on top of that if certain milestones were met. Now, we don't know what those milestones were, but let's assume they were hit, and Niantic ended up having $30 million to develop Pokemon Go with. Now, to put that number in perspective, The Witcher 3 cost about $80 million to make, including marketing, so Niantic had just about 1/3 of The Witcher 3's budget. Now, with that number having been put into perspective, does the final product even remotely resemble what it should for that amount of money? Of course, I want to note before I go any further, I am not a game developer and I have never made a game. But just from what little knowledge of game development I do have, it doesn't even come close to what I would expect. And it only gets worse when you dig a little bit into the development. So, for those who don't know, Niantic actually made a different game before they made Pokemon Go, called Ingress. The whole idea of Ingress is that it was an augmented reality smartphone game very much like Pokemon Go, and the gameplay consisted of capturing portals at places of cultural, historical, artistic, community, or religious importance. Now, you might be thinking, wow, that sounds just like the Pokestops. And you would be correct in that assumption, because from what I've been told, Niantic literally just ported over the data from Ingress into Pokemon Go to make the Pokestops, which, by the way, is why so many Pokestops are churches. And not only that, but we also know that Niantic actually used Ingress data to determine Pokemon spawn locations as well. Now, I admit, I don't have actual proof to back up this next point, but I'd say that if they pulled Pokestop data from Ingress, as well as Pokemon spawn location data from Ingress, it isn't too much of a logical leap to assume they also pulled quite a bit of Ingress's base code as well. I mean, why not? It already exists, and functions almost exactly how you want it to already, so it just makes sense. Now, the point of me telling you all of this is not building up to calling Niantic a bunch of lazy assholes for recycling bits of their last game. In fact, I'd be more ready to commend them for being really smart and using such good time management strategies. At least I would be if I weren't busy wondering what in the hell Niantic actually did with all the free time they saved. I mean, the terrain data is fresh from Google, and the Pokemon models and animations are pulled from X and Y. So what does that leave that Niantic specifically made for Pokemon Go? By my count, all I can think of is modifications to the Ingress code, the sound effects, the UI, the trainer avatars, the Pokemon catching mechanics, and the gym battle mechanics. Now again, I'm a stupid 19-year-old making equally stupid internet videos, and not a game developer. But I'm still left standing here thinking, how in the fuck did this game cost anywhere near $30 million to make? And when I think about it like that, it just boggles my mind. I mean, think about all the cool shit they could have done. First, and most obviously, actual Pokemon battles. They could have implemented a trading system, an in-game profile, and a friends list, or how about the ability to interact with Pokemon you've caught using the AR, like in Pokemon-Amie? The point is, I think $30 million should have gone a shit ton farther than giving us 2 different 3D models of hats texture swapped a few times. And that's why when I look at Pokemon Go, I just see the lost potential. I mean, look at the audience the game attracted. Take my sisters, for example, who have never once shown any interest in any video game, and they played Pokemon Go. And that's not just my experience. I've read about so many people who've never touched a console or handheld game who've picked up Pokemon Go and had a lot of fun. But that isn't going to last. Pokemon Go as it is right now is little more than a novelty. It's cool for a while, sure, but swiftly gets boring when you figure out there's barely anything to do or to keep you engaged beyond just collecting. This was a grand opportunity to introduce millions of new people to how Pokemon games work, but by putting out a shit product, they've ensured Pokemon Go will be just another passing fad. I mean, sure, that 75 million player base is going to drop regardless, but it wouldn't have been anywhere near as severe as it's going to be if they had put out a good game. Hell, right now, even most of the hardcore Pokemon fans that I know are already starting to get bored and go off to do different things, and just think about that. The people who have dreamed about something like this happening for years are bored of it within a month. So, I guess the big question is that it? Is it too late to save Pokemon Go? I've got no idea. I mean, if Niantic released an update tomorrow that added battling and leveling, then I know a ton of people who'd go back in a heartbeat. I mean, I held off on making this video just in case exactly that happened. But if they were going to do that, we probably would have heard about it by now. In fact, those features don't even seem to be on the horizon right now. The metaphorical Pokemon Go ship has been sinking ever since it landed in the water, and Niantic's been too busy patching holes with duct tape to even start thinking about upgrading the sail. So, by the time Niantic does finish fixing bugs and actually gets around to making cool new additions to the game, I think it'll be way too late. I mean, obviously some of the die-hard fanbase will still come back, but all those extra people will have moved on to whatever the next big thing is. And sure, there'll be other ARGs in the future like Pokemon Go, but none of them will have the same pull. I mean, can you think of any franchise that could be taped onto a mobile game besides Pokemon that would guarantee anywhere near the amount of success? Because I can't. So, yeah. Maybe in a year or two Pokemon Go will have been patched into the state it really should have been upon launch, but I don't think anyone will care by that point. And that just makes me really, really sad. Because when we look at how much the game was able to accomplish, even in its current state, it just makes me wonder how much greater it could have been. Special thanks to my lovely Patreon patrons Matt Flowers, Isaiah Christo, Aaron Graff, Sauce Bucky, and Krista for helping support my endeavors.